fiatalok, köszönöm szépen a himnuszt, méltóságteljesen énekeltétek, és nagy meglepetés volt az vendégeim számára. Szeretném bemutatni nektek a mai nap főszereplőit. Elsőként Elizabeth Webster asszony, az Amerikai Egyesült Államok Magyarországi Nagykövetségének sajtóattachéját. És Nagy Cecíliát, az Emberi Erőforrások Minisztériuma Oktatási Nemzetközi Főosztályának nemzetközi referensét. Nagy megtiszteltetés és kiváltság a Tokai Ferenc Gimnázium Szakközépiskola és Kollégiumnak, hogy az Amerikai Egyesült Államok Magyarországi Nagykövetsége és az Emberi Erőforrások Minisztériuma által írt pályázaton elnyerhettük ennek a mai Amerika napnak a megrendezését. Köszönjük szépen!
So our guests today are very special ones. One is Elizabeth Webster, who comes from the Embassy of the United States of America, and she is the press attaché at the moment. And the Ministry of Human Resources sent us another very special guest, Cecilia Nagy. So the Tokai Ferenc Secondary Grammar and Secondary Vocational School is very happy because we could have the opportunity to organize this debate for you, and it is a great privilege and honor for us that we have these organizations and their representatives here, so the Embassy of the United States of America and the Ministry of Human Resources. Thank you. And now Elizabeth Webster, the press attaché, is going to give us a presentation about teenage life in the USA.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Sajnálom nem jól beszélek magyarul, tehát angolul beszélek. Okay? I have to say that I am very impressed that you learned the Star Spangled Banner. Please, I hope you give yourself a hand for that. That was really excellent. That's really very touching. Thank you. I was mentioning to your principal when we were meeting and with the mayor that song is very difficult to sing. And if you go on YouTube, and I know all of you are on YouTube because you're the right age, but if you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of videos of famous American singers making mistakes singing that song because it's one of the hardest. So I want to thank you very much for making the attempt. It was very brave and very well done. Thank you. Very touching. So when I wanted to come to Tokai, I was told that you wanted to hear about the typical American teenager. And I panicked a little bit because, as you might guess, I haven't been a teenager for a number of years. So I don't know that I know exactly what it's like to be an American teenager today. So I thought about it, well, how can I find out what an American teenager is like? What's an average American teenager? And what would be interesting to you? And of course, I know what interests teenagers more than statistics, right? That was a joke. But I know you're not interested so much in statistics. But I do have a friend who works at the Census Bureau. So I tried to find out a little bit more about what teenagers in America are like. First of all, there are about 22 million teenagers in America. That's more than 2 times the number of Hungarians of all ages. So talking about what an average American teenager is a little bit difficult. It's hard to generalize about 9.5 million Hungarians. How can you generalize about 22 million American teenagers? But I guess what you can say about them is that they're a diverse group. A number of them come from immigrant families. Their parents may have been immigrants. The most spoken language besides English is Spanish. The second most spoken language, does anyone have a guess? Not Hungarian. Almost as difficult as Hungarian Chinese. A lot of Chinese. It's very difficult to say that a teenager who lives in New York City has so much in common with a teenager who lives on a farm in Illinois. One of the things about the United States that's hard to grasp, I think, sometimes for foreign audiences is how enormous and large it is, and how it can be very different to have an experience whether you live in a city or in a rural area. But there's some things that are fairly common. For example, one thing that's very different that I've noticed in Europe is almost every American teenager has a driver's license. How many people here have a license to drive a car? Yeah, if I ask them to, and for teachers, right? If you ask the same in an American high school, at least half the hands would go up, and the only hands that would be raised are the kids who are too young. In the United States, it's state by state, but most states the age is 16 or 17. And it's a rite of passage. In fact, the driver's license is the usual form of ID. You have no national identification card. So having a car and driving is a very important thing for teenagers. Some of the other things, when we were looking at the statistics, in terms of working, one of my colleagues noted that people don't assume that American teenagers, the ones you see on TV, the TV shows here, you think they're all from rich families. They just go to parties, they act like the Kardashians. I mean, I don't know exactly everything that you're watching, but that's not really the reality for most American teenagers. 30% of American teenagers who are in school also have jobs and work. That's a pretty stunning figure. That's almost 1 in every 3. When I was in high school, I worked at restaurants. In the summer, I worked on a farm. I babysat all the time. It's a very common thing starting at a pretty young age for American teenagers to work. So that's something that might be different. In terms of what they're interested in, most people are interested in good education and how to pay for it. That's different than in Hungary, I think. I know the system here is changing, and I know that Victoria, I think, will talk a little bit about that and study in the United States. But in general, education in the United States, higher education is expensive. On the other hand, there are a lot more opportunities to get help paid for. So that's something that teenagers stress about. In terms of other general things about teenagers, Kathy, was there anything that you can remember that we were talking about? Smoking. Oh, we're not talking about that. Well, I mean, as you probably know, in the United States, the drinking age is a lot older. It's 21. So I can't say that American teenagers aren't interested in alcohol, but they can't legally drink. So that's an interesting dynamic. And there's a lot of debate about whether that encourages some of the worst behaviors that, when you're a teenager, you don't always make the best choices. Of course, when you're an adult, you don't always make the best choices either, but there's a lot of debate about that. I mean, when I was a teenager, more people did smoke. Now it's very rare, actually, that people would smoke. I don't know, I think one of the things I thought about doing when I talked to Kathy about my colleague about what I would say is I thought I would actually be maybe quite American and ask you guys questions. Instead of trying to figure out what you wanted to know, maybe I could just ask you. So, any questions? Anyone have any questions about America in general?
So we have a microphone for the students who would like to know something else about the life of American teenagers. Esther.
What time they are going to school?
Thank you. Sorry about that. So I can hear the actual question. What time do they go to school? This is actually a really interesting question. It depends. You know, in our government, the education system is state by state and community by community, so there's no set time across the country that children go to school. But usually, most schools start around 8 in the morning, partly because in the United States, outside of the large cities, most kids get to school on school buses, and they try to make sure the school buses are finished taking the kids to school before the parents have to go to work. So that's the best answer. Thank you. But it varies. What time do you start in the morning? 10? 8. So the same. So early, I know, especially when you're a teenager. It's not so early when you have little kids or you're in a different, but yeah. Has anyone traveled to,
Do American teenagers celebrate the different holidays?
Yes, they do, actually. That's a great question. And, sorry, Kathy, can you do my gift? Can you do my gift? This is my colleague, Kathy Bureau from the embassy, by the way. So, that's a great question, actually. You know, in the United States, we do celebrate holidays. We have national holidays, and we have holidays that are reflect the different religious diversity that we have in the United States. So, it depends on the school district, but normally you would celebrate the big national holidays, which are, you know, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Martin Luther King holiday, things like that. We have off for Christmas. Usually there's a spring break that coincides with Easter and Passover. Students who wanted to take off, if it was not already holidays, would do so for the high holy days, the Jewish high holy days, or if they're Muslim, for the different Eid holidays. So yes, we do, and then it also depends district to district. Where I grew up was a very, very small town, 5,000 people in the country, and it was where a lot of people go to hunt and fish. And so we always got the first day of hunting season off because they didn't want kids standing waiting for the school bus getting shot by hunters. So yes, we celebrate holidays, but there are a variety of national, religious, and then local holidays. So thank you for the question. Yeah.
What's the most famous holiday place where the American people go?
Oh, well, I think for vacation, people are looking to go for vacation. The most famous, of course, is Disney World and Disneyland. I think everyone's probably heard of Disney World and Disneyland. That's a wonderful place to go, especially for families. People also go to the beaches. You know, we have beaches, a very large coastline on the East Coast, the West Coast, and along the Gulf in the South. So there are lots of, it just depends on what you want to do, but definitely Disney is a great place to go for holidays. Hope that answers your question.
How many students choose the higher education instead of working?
That's a great question. Sorry, I wasn't sure that was your review, but I apologize for that. That's a great question. That's actually the one statistic I couldn't find. Maybe Victoria, do you have that by any chance?
Well, not exactly, but well, like half the students, half the students start coming out.
That's what my impression was. It's about half. When I looked at statistics of teenagers being in school, 85% of teenagers were in school, but that's a combination of people still in high school and people who are already in college. Because for us, university, usually most people enter university around 18, and if they go for a 4-year school, they can finish at 22 with a bachelor's degree. But there are other, as Victoria will talk about, there are other types of education. You know, we have a very strong community college system. which are 2-year degrees, and a lot of those are often very focused on critical areas where we need education, like healthcare, nursing care, a lot of computer entry-level jobs you can get with a 2-year degree. So we have a whole different variety of higher education that can fit what people's job goals are. I hope that, I'm sorry I didn't answer the exact question, but I can find out and get back to you. Thank you.
The most popular sports.
The most popular sport is American football. Has anyone watched American football before? Never seen American football? Oh, there's one. That's great. Congratulations. I mean, not to put you on the spot, but so American football is very popular. Also baseball is a personal favorite of mine. My brother actually works for a baseball team. So anyone know baseball? Baseball, okay. The most popular world sport, which everyone else calls football, but we call soccer, is popular in terms of that's what people play, but they don't really watch it professionally. It's an interesting dynamic. And of course, basketball, NBA basketball is very popular as well. Those are probably the biggest sports that people watch. But one of the statistics that I found is that 60% of American teenagers play a sport in high school. So it's popular to do sports, and it's something that interests people. Do you have a lot of sports here at the school that are opportunities?
How do the American teenagers spend their free time?
Well, probably much like the way that you spend your free time, I'm guessing. I mean, as I mentioned, 30% of American teenagers are in school and working. So that's quite a large amount. But in terms of free time, beyond, being in school and studying and working, people are on the internet, they're listening to music, they're going to movies, they're hanging out with their friends, they're on their phones now more than anything else on their phone. They're on Facebook, although increasingly teenagers are not on Facebook because that's where their parents are. So they're finding other things. What are some things that you do that you think American teenagers might or might not do? Do you think there's something, anything different?
And how do American people try to protect the environment?
A very easy question, no. It's a very good question. It's a difficult history. There are things we do well and there are things we do less well. I think one of the interesting things over the last several years, actually, in the U.S., our emissions have actually decreased, which is a really positive trend. We have a long way to go. Obviously, there's some international diplomatic work that still needs to be done on that. But one thing I can say from the time that I was a teenager until now is that most municipalities have mandatory recycling. And so when you put your trash out, you put your recycling out. That doesn't solve a lot of the base problems, which are overconsumption and not picking things that can be reused within a home or within a family or a consumer unit. But we do recycle. And one of the other things that I think is fairly popular, one of the other things I learned about American teenagers when I was doing some research, is that more than 75% of them plan to do volunteer work. And a lot of the volunteer projects that they're choosing are environment-based, going to, taking a group of kids and they go to a highway that's dirty that people throw things out of their car and they'll just go clean it up. Or they'll go to a river and they'll clean up the stuff that's on the river. So environmental activism and volunteerism is very important. It's a combination of the government trying to make rules to keep people from damaging things, and also also people taking action in their communities to solve problems that they see are out there. So it's a combination of things. So great question.
Are young people interested in fashion? Are young people interested in fashion?
Are they interested in? Oh, in fashion?
Yes.
More than I am, I have to be honest. So, yes, I think so. You know, there's, I think every teenager is, right? I mean, you all care what you look like. You all care about the clothes you wear and how you look. I mean, it's a way to express yourself and what you wear. Certainly, you know, my cousins who are teenagers are always concerned with, you know, the things that the boys, the young men and the young women are both all concerned with how they look and their hair. And in fact, some of my young male cousins, I think, have more hairstyling products than the girls do. But yes, I think they are. Are you? No? Well, you look very nice, you guys. So. Yeah.
Which is the most popular brand?
In the U.S.? I mean, I know there are very popular brands like Abercrombie and Hollister and, you know, Gap and things like that, but a lot of it depends, and a lot of it depends on, you know, how much you can afford to spend. You know, when I was growing up, I was not from a wealthy family, so I emulated the name brand fashions rather than purchase them. So it just, I mean, I think it just depends what's out there. I know, but there are some brands that you see quite a bit, so. And actually, I don't know if you've heard I've heard on radio all the time the song Thrift Shop. Does anyone know that song, Thrift Shop? Macklemore? The rap song? Yeah. Okay, I'm old, I'm not that old, I know some of that. So, but that's actually kind of a cool thing. You know, a lot of American teenagers, even in my day, back in the Stone Ages, would go to thrift shops and find cool vintage clothes to kind of, you know, wear, an old jacket from the 1950s or things like that. So, in terms of fashion, that's another option. Oh, how long is the summer holiday? Well, you know, I keep saying it depends, and this is partly because, as I mentioned, school systems are very much by state, the laws, and now there are more school systems that go throughout the year, and they'll take large breaks, so they'll have actually summer classes. But normally it's from, say, the 3rd or 4th week in June until our American Labor Day, just before then, the end of August. So usually about 2 months for summer vacation. Although again, you know, most people work or do volunteer or something like that, so I'm sure there are a lot of students that kind of sit around and play video games, but not all. And I'm sure not all of you do that too.
Other holidays?
I'm sorry?
The other holidays?
The other holidays? Usually over the Christmas, winter break, there's usually about 2 weeks. And then in the spring, over the Easter, Passover holidays, there's usually a week or so, and then the American holidays, so that's about it.
And how American teenagers celebrate Thanksgiving?
How many celebrate Thanksgiving? Oh, how do they? Oh, that's a great question. So Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, in part because what it stands for. In part because it's one of the holidays that all Americans celebrate. Usually Thanksgiving is about family, and there are a lot of traditional foods that we eat for Thanksgiving. Obviously everyone knows about turkey. Those who are vegetarian sometimes make a tofurkey, tofu. But turkey is very common, and then a lot of the side dishes, it depends on where you live in the country. So I grew up in the Northeast, and so we always have bread stuffing and mashed potatoes and green beans, and then with big meal and the whole family cooks and comes together, and it's a wonderful event. In the South, you might have cornbread stuffing and yams and with marshmallows on top and all kinds of other, cornbread, things like that. So there's a little regional variation, just as there is in most American cooking, but what's common is people almost always go and celebrate with their families, and it's a really wonderful event, and it's my favorite, so thanks for asking about it.
Do the American students have to wear uniform?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Oh, uniforms.
Yes.
It's becoming more common in some public schools, usually in cities, to wear uniforms to school. But usually most of the children who wear uniforms go to private school. It's about, I think, 13 or 14% of the high schoolers in school go to private schools. So it's not so common. It's becoming more common, but maybe in part to reduce the distraction of people being as concerned about fashion as, teenagers are.
I would like to ask that how do you see the Hungarian people and the Hungarian culture in general?
In general. Oh, listen, it's always hard to generalize about. Sorry, I'm not very good professional at the microphone apparently. It's hard to generalize. I have to say though that I've been in Hungary for almost a year and I love it. It's a wonderful culture. I found a wonderful diversity here in Hungary. I think that among Hungarians there are a broad variety of experiences. There's Budapest, but there's a whole world of Hungary outside of Budapest as well, as you know. It's a wonderful welcoming place for people from outside of Hungary. And I find that even with my very, very bad Hungarian, people are so generous and so warm and curious about me and my family, and they feel very invested that my family is having a good experience here. I can tell you that my kids love it very much. My son has told me that he doesn't want to leave when it's time to go. He's decided he'll stay here until he's grown up. So you might have him for a while longer. He really loves it here. So. Thank you. After they finish high school? Who? If they don't go on to university, or if they don't go on to college? I don't know the statistics. I guess anecdotally there are a lot of people that work in sales, that work in retail sales for companies. There's a lot of opportunities at the entry level for people to work in food service, to work in restaurants. It just depends. There's a large part of the country where there are a lot of jobs in agriculture. Or in factories, doing processing of agriculture and things like that. So, but certainly, education, whether it's education towards a bachelor's degree or more technical focused education to become, a skilled tradesperson, certainly allows you to have more of a career rather than a job. And so that's something that I think one thing that we do pretty well is we have a whole range of educational options that if people are motivated and they're willing to invest in themselves, they can take advantage of those educational options to make a better future for themselves.
What's your everyday job like?
What's the average job like? Oh, my job. Oh. My average day, busy. I can talk about this week. Usually I start work at 8:30 in the morning, and I usually, this week, am getting home around 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So it's a lot. Most Americans work a lot. We work too much. But it's partly because of the job I've chosen. But for my honor today as a diplomat, is that what you're interested in? A lot of it's writing reports, meeting people. You know, my job as a press attaché, I focus on what's in the Hungarian media, and I also focus on what people are interested in and how Hungarians get their information, and trying to make sure that if there are stories about the United States, that it's accurate and that they're getting a full picture of what's going on. And so I monitor the media, and part of the portfolio that I cover is to do all the social media for the embassy. So is anyone here on Facebook? Nobody's on Facebook. Really? Nobody's on Facebook in this whole audience. I find that very hard to believe. You're just not admitting it. Okay. Yes, thank you. You're on Facebook. Good.
How can we imagine teenager lives in boarding schools and in dormitories?
Well, you know, I actually can answer that question because I went to a boarding school. Even though I wasn't a boarding student, I was very fortunate. I got a scholarship to go to a boarding school. I can tell you this about the school I went to. 6 days a week of school. We had school on Saturday. So 6 days a week of school, it starts in the morning. It's very regimented at a boarding school. You wake up in the morning, you have breakfast by 8 o'clock, you're in class by 8 o'clock. You go through the end of the day, then you have 2 hours mandatory sports until 5 o'clock at night, and then you have half an hour to get ready for dinner, and then you have a mandatory dinner, and then you have a 2-hour study hall, and then it's 10 o'clock at night, you have lights out. So it's very regimented. But the whole purpose of most boarding schools is to try to prepare you for the most elite, prestigious universities, and there's a lot of competition, so you have to work for it.
Which is the most popular food in America?
Most popular food? I mean, obviously, everybody here has probably seen or heard of McDonald's. You know, McDonald's, everybody knows about McDonald's. But it's hard to say, you know, it really depends on where you live. But there are a lot of foods that people from Maine to Florida to, you know, New Mexico to Alaska would eat. I mean, most people eat pasta, spaghetti, or pizza, or tacos. I mean, an interesting thing about American cuisine is it's influenced by the diversity of immigrants that have come from all around the world and brought really good food. And so it usually gets adapted to sort of a different taste, but most Americans eat Chinese food on a regular basis. Most Americans, you know, eat Indian food. Everyone eats Mexican food, Italian food. Most Americans have goulash. Of course, we call it goulash, which doesn't sound as nice, but you know, so there are pieces of world cuisine from all over that we take on board and kind of make our own. But it's one of the great things about being American that we kind of get the best of all the dishes the world has to offer. So I don't know if that answers the question. So, I don't know. Does someone have a microphone? They don't want to ask. Okay, and then I'll come to you. Yes.
And American teenagers eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, of course, in school.
I hope so. I think that there's more of a push, certainly over the last 5 years, to raise awareness about the danger. You know, obesity is a problem in the United States, and certainly childhood and teenage obesity is an increasing problem. A large part of that is diet. Another part of that is, despite the fact that 60% of American teenagers play sports, they also spend, you know, more than 2 hours a day watching television or playing games or sitting down. I mean, they spend so much time sitting that no matter what you eat, if you don't get up and move, you're not going to be healthy. But there's definitely a movement to raise awareness about the importance of a good diet. I know Michelle Obama, our First Lady, has been a real proponent. She actually put an organic garden into the White House. And she had students from local schools come over to the White House and actually work in the garden, and they took vegetables back to their school and they used them in their cafeteria. And there are a lot of famous chefs in the U.S. who have been working to try to help school systems improve their menus, to make them healthier, to make them more tasty and not just, unhealthy, full of fat. Things like that. I think there's another.
I have another question. Lots of people are learning English. Do you want to learn Hungarian?
Do you repeat? I'm sorry.
Lots of people are learning English.
Yes.
What about you? Do you want to learn Hungarian?
Igen. Igen. Tanultam csak 10 hónap, de sajnos ez nagyon nehéz nyelv, magyar nyelv, és ez nagyon nehéz beszélni, mikor sok ember, de és sajnálom, hogy nem elég jól beszélek magyarul, de lassan biztosan jobban beszélek, és remélem, hogy nem tudom, 2-3 évig múlva lehet jól beszélni.
Thank you very much for answering all these questions. It was very interesting to hear about your life and about the life of teenagers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for good questions. I really appreciate it. And I must say, I'm very touched that all of you come out to support America Day. It means a lot as an American. And I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.